So, today we're going to be discovering the powerful secrets of self management with Holly, the founder and CEO of Indigo Volunteers. I met Holly through Semco Style, and her energy and vibrance was just immediately something I was drawn to. And as well as being like minded peers within the Semco Style community, I just loved Holly's story and felt like what Holly had done at Indigo Volunteers is something that so many charities can learn from. So, Indigo Volunteers is a remarkable charity that has made a significant impact on the lives of refugees along the European migratory route. So, through their grassroots partnerships, Indigo provides essential aid, healthcare, education, skills, workshops, and vital services to tens of thousands of refugees. Holly's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Having spent years in the field working hands on in places like Greece, Serbia, and Bosnia, she now resides in the Netherlands. Little did she know that she had been running the charity Semco Style all along. Since joining the January 2023 cohort, Holly has harnessed the tools learned from Semco, leading to immediate and transformative results. So today we're going to be having an eye-opening conversation where Holly shares her incredible journey of implementing self-management practices into her charity's operations. So let's get started. Hi, Holly, and welcome to Make It Thrive.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, the first thing I want to dig into is just to give everyone some context. Who and what is Indigo Volunteers? If you just want to kind of tell us a bit more about what you're doing so that people have a bit of context.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Indigo Volunteers quite a while ago, over a decade ago, and it was in response to wanting to volunteer and just not finding a responsible way of doing that. And the only opportunities available were these really huge fee-paying companies. And at that time, I thought, gosh, I've got so much to give. I know I can help, but it doesn't feel right, nor can I afford to go through these fee-paying companies. So the the long and short of it is, Indigo was set up in response to that, to fill that gap. I met a bunch of charities. I was studying psychology at the time. I then went on to study pediatric nursing. And then through my elective placement abroad, I was finding all these charities that needed help and support from volunteers, but just didn't know how to access them. And then back home, I had all of these contacts and friends who really wanted to volunteer but couldn't find the charities. And so Indigo really is just that platform that puts those two together. So we basically send help to where it's needed in the form of people.
Amazing. And are you kind of global? What kind of what kind of framework do you work within in sort of like a worldwide context? Is there specific areas that you sort of deal with, or is it kind of just global, wherever needs help? What kind of
Well, we were working to start with, well, all over the world. But then what happened was in 2016, I moved to Greece in response to the European refugee crisis, and was supporting so many grassroots organisations were either moving there or most of them were brand new, starting there at the time. Just trying to help refugees. I mean, imagine getting off a boat and you've got absolutely nothing with you, just a bag, and sometimes people didn't even have a bag with them. So they needed basic things from food and healthcare and shelter, and then you move on to education, language classes, all kinds of things. And so I moved to Greece to help provide volunteers to those organisations. And then what we decided to do was make a strategic decision to focus our efforts there, because, we did have and do have limited resources, of course. And we felt like focusing on that area would have the biggest impact, which we still do today. So we support currently around 47 charitable partners by sending them volunteers. And we also help them with like organizational development. We've kind of become this like spider web of network because we've partnered with so many different charities. So we help with or connecting them with each other, resource and knowledge sharing, and also with psychosocial support connections as well, because that's really needed in this sector.
Oh my goodness, it seems very like it's really kind of you've been clearly listening to the demand of what's needed and actually trying to bring in that network approach rather than trying to kind of do it all yourself, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much already happening in the network, and it's just about like sharing all of that. And sometimes you obviously, so many of our partners, they start and they think, right, I want to help with food, or I want to help with this, but who is there to connect them all? Like that, just it's so rare that there's an overarching body, as it were. And not that we're any authority in the sector at all, but we are that connection uh, player, I suppose.
Yeah, it's bridging people together, isn't it? Like you say, and it is really difficult when you want to, volunteer for certain projects and you don't really know who to go to or where to turn to kind of help with, participating in things. For example, I know a lot of people locally in our area have wanted to help with the kind of the everything that's going on in Ukraine, and it's like, well, where do you turn to and who do you go to? So we need sort of organizations like yourself so much to be able to bridge those gaps.
Exactly. I mean, that's such a common question I hear is like, I want to help and I don't know how. And that's something we really try and help with. That's what we really want to inspire people and be that platform that people can go to when they're just stuck. And also with corporates, we get so many requests from corporates like, we've got these days that our employees can volunteer and we don't know what to do with them. And so we help with like remote placements as well. So yeah, there's so much people can do. They don't even have to go, be on the ground. They can help, for example, people who know about strategy or fundraising or social media. You can do all of this remotely. You can do training sessions for organizations right where you are. So yeah, there's lots of ways people can help.
It's amazing. And obviously, the one reason why you're joining me today is that you are a self-managed organization, and that might sound quite unusual to people, especially being as it's in the charity sector. People can think obviously there's a lot of red tape, a lot of legalities that go on with being a charity. So how long have you been self-managing, Holly?
That's such a good question because you're right. There's so much red tape and bureaucracy, but that's I suppose it's the same with most organisations. It's not just the charity sector, but because I started Indigo, and I think it's been a bit of a blessing and a curse. I didn't have a business background, as I mentioned earlier. I was nursing, and I did studied psychology before that. So I obviously have an interest in how the mind works and people and behaviors and so on. But I didn't know at that time how to run a business or an organization. So I kind of, it's a blessing and a curse because it would have been great to have had some skills at that time that I have now, but I didn't have at that time because I've had to learn them the hard way. At the same time, I had a blank slate. So I could actually just critically think, okay, I know, for example, that companies have an annual leave time, but why? Like, why do they have that? And why would I expect someone in my team, if they take a bit less or a bit more, that I don't trust that I yeah, why would I not trust them to, oh, they've got a headache for a day, why would I say to them, oh, well, I don't really care, sorry, you've got to finish this? Like, why would I not trust them to say, okay, yeah, if you need half a day off, you take half a day off and I'll speak to you later, or whatever it is. So I kind of had that blank slate to go from what felt right in my gut. And I actually didn't realize until recently that we are a self-managed organization until I did the Semco training course. I actually would never have described us in this way. I knew that we were doing things a bit unusually, but I didn't know it was classed as self-managed. And I started this course, and there's the steps that you take, the roadmap. And I thought, okay, we've done step 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we got to like step 9. I was like, oh my god, we've actually done the majority under these steps. And I thought, okay, maybe we are self-managed then. And of course, there's always things to improve and learn. And I learned so many tools and practices, but so yeah, I would say we've been self-managed from the beginning, and there's lots of examples I have for how the practices we've done that make us self-managed. But it mostly just comes down to the central thing of just trusting your colleagues and using your common sense, and we've done that from the very beginning.
Yeah. I feel like, Holly, you were one of these children who was always asking why. Why is the holiday so that long? But
Yeah,
why? I feel like that curiosity has really served you.
definitely. And it's like just questioning rather than just going with the flow like sheep, which is easy to do, and I do that in some situations, don't get me wrong, but I can also often be the person taking a step back and questioning, okay, but why are we doing this step? And that becomes very useful in a lot of situations, because often people don't have an answer. Yeah.
Amazing. And in terms of, like you mentioned, with it being in the charity sector, has there been anything that's been
Mm.
different that you've had to navigate, that in terms of that kind of self-managed journey where you've had to think more critically about how you approach something, because I know that here in the UK, there's certain legal limitations or things that people can and can't do in terms of the way their business is structured or the decisions that get made. So how have you kind of enabled that self-management within the kind of environment of a charity?
Mm. I don't know if there's as big a difference between charities for profits and not for profits. I think people often think that there are bigger differences than there are. Now, I've never worked, as I said, I've worked for the NHS, and I did do a little bit of work under some bigger organisations before, but I don't have, you know, a decade of experience in the corporate setting, so I can't say fully. But from what I know and my exposure to it, and also from my friends and so on, and in my network, I just think that what you're trying to achieve, the results you're trying to achieve, obviously has a social impact. You're trying to make positive change in the world rather than being driven by profit. But other than that, you still have so much similarity. Like, you still have the challenging managers that aren't that are micromanaging you, for example. You still have to deal with all the HR issues, all the legal issues, all the finance issues. Like, they are fundamentally the same from what I understand. So I don't think that having being a charity has changed any of that. I just think it's definitely unusual to be self-managed and a self-managed charity. That's definitely an unusual thing. But I honestly think it's the most wonderful thing, because it's so important as any organization to evolve, and in order to evolve and adapt, you have to allow for creativity and innovation. And if you are being pushed down by management, for example, or processes, and you do not allow for that creativity and innovation, you are going to get stuck. And you really can't get stuck as a charity. You really can't. You have to keep up with this absolutely ever-changing context and challenges that come your way. So I think it's really important to be self-managed as a charity, actually. Although it might seem a bit counterintuitive to some, it's definitely works, in my opinion.
Yeah. One thing that I think we often joke about within kind of the self-management community is, don't label it self-management, because people go, oh, what? That's like the crazy thing to do. Have you ever kind of labeled it that, and then had what's people's general kind of response to the way
Mm.
that you guys work?
Well, as I say, I've only been recently saying it, so like it's quite new language for me to use. But I would say, yeah, definitely, I completely agree. That is a bit of a response. So, um, but people are very interested in it. So how I speak to other people about it is I say, listen, you've got these steps, but if out of the 11 steps you just do the first 3, you're already making progress, and you can stick there if that's what you want to do. So I like breaking it down with the steps. I think that makes it more palatable for people, and it's less of a commitment, I suppose, that you have to go the full way, because you don't have to go the full way. Just even making some steps is great progress. But yeah, people do have a bit of an association with self-management in this way. But I think if you break it down with what you actually do, what does it mean? It means that you trust your colleagues. It means you don't micromanage. It means, and you actually give these tangible examples of what it means in practice. It's way less scary than that label.
Yeah, definitely. Has there ever been a moment in this journey for you where, I know you said you've only just recently started to kind of label it self management, but has there been a moment in this journey where you've gone, you know, it's almost like this is why we work this way, because this is what it enables us to do? Like, have you had that real kind of, I wouldn't say epiphany moment, but a real moment in where you've really realized that actually this is why you work this way, and this is what it enables you to do, and really felt that in your core?
Mm. I think regularly, like I have these moments where I'm thinking, oh wow, this is so the way to go. I can give you kind of a bigger example and a smaller example. So the
Yeah.
bigger example happened about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. We hired someone in a role, and it wasn't the right time for that person to be in that particular role, it turned out, after they started. And rather than, I suppose, traditionally in an organization, someone in HR would go, well, they're not, they don't have, let's not let them move past the probation period and they can move on and da da da. We thought, okay, but what's going on with this person? Let's find out. Let's work with them. Let's speak to them like they're human beings, and do it with kindness. And we did that. And it turns out this person expressed to us how they were feeling, where they felt that they would shine in a perhaps a different role, where their strengths were. And now this person is like the backbone of our charity. And so rather than having this essentially a firing conversation, that you're not performing this X, Y, and Z, by having a framing it in a different way, like including them and saying, this is how we feel, how do you feel, and how does this work? It's allowed them to essentially move into a role that now we don't know what we would do without this person. And I think that is part of self-management, because it's just this open dialogue, this transparency, this openness, this kindness that you, this respect that you give one another. And I think that's like a really kind of big example. And it comes up sometimes, we reflect about, wow, like how this person's role has kind of changed. And a small one is like a month ago or so, one of our team said, hey, do you mind if I'm really struggling to be on video all the time and sitting down. Do you mind if I try by dialing in and walking with some of the meetings? And I was able to say, because after doing my Semco training, rather than just like, well, yeah, of course, try it, without having the rationale behind it, I said, well, yeah, this is a pilot, and absolutely we should pilot this, and everyone, we get the feedback afterwards and see how it's going, and really encourage it. And so then this person started walking during meetings, and it's all about just making people feel safe, that they can come up with suggestions and ideas that work for them, making their days better, and i.e. them more motivated and happy in their workplace. And if something doesn't work that you pilot, also being open about that as well. So, and I remember thinking just then, like, yes, this is also self-management coming in. Yeah, we can do this because this is a pilot. So I really like that people feel really safe in our team to come up with these suggestions.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's that real pilot in action. It's like we've got a moment here, we've got a learning moment where we can take something and run with it. And oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was a fantastic example. So on the other end of the spectrum, what's been the kind of the challenges or the things where you've kind of, yeah, struggled against slightly?
Mm. Well, I think two things probably. One is the getting the right people in that get this. I think most organizations really have a suboptimal recruitment process. And again, I've learned this the hard way. We definitely had that. Now we can refine it every now and again slightly, but really I think it's really great process, our recruitment process now, because we've spent a lot of time, shaping it. But before we were at this level, it was, we would make those mistakes and get people in that were either one extreme or the other. Maybe they would struggle because they need more structure and rigidity or something, being told what to do. Or the other extreme, that when you do give people the freedom, they take liberties. And you need to have like a really good balance between the two. And it is difficult, that how do you control without controlling? You don't want to be controlling, but you still want to be in control. And it's not necessarily the best language to use there, but you get what I mean. You still want to have an oversight of what's going on. And I think that is really important, is the people that you get in your team, and really explaining this at the beginning and taking that all very, very seriously. And yes, you do have to invest more time, but my God, it saves you so much more time in the long term, even the midterm. And the other thing is, I think sometimes I've not thought things are a big deal, and I've made some moves that I didn't even think were that bold. But like, we have a board of trustees, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, Holly," like I remember like about 3 years ago, we had a different board than we do now, and I just slipped in during a meeting. Oh, by the way, we've already started a 4-day work week. Now I know I need to take these things a bit more seriously and formally when they're bigger. But I think there's definitely sometimes a difference between how the board operates and how our operational team operates. And my job is to be the bridge there, and to be the communicator and checking things are good on both sides. So yeah, that was a good lesson for me to learn at that time, just announcing the 4-day work week, right? Yeah, so yeah, that's it.
I'm sure Ricardo Semler would be very proud of your maverick abilities, Holly.
Yeah, who knows?
Amazing. So now that you're you said 10 years that Indigo's been going, and
More, yeah.
more, my goodness. So you're now kind of well into, I know you haven't been labeling it self-management, but you're now well into this journey, really. And what is something that, looking back on the past 10 years or so, would you do differently? Or you to somebody maybe starting this journey like you were at the start, when you had this blank slate, what is something that you would do differently, or recommend to someone who had a blank slate but no business experience, let's say?
That's a really good question. I think it's really about balance, in terms of, and you do kind of just have to do it and refine it to get it right. I'll give you an example. I'm a very democratic leader, and sometimes I can be too democratic and involve people too much. And so what I've learned along the way as well is when to stop involving people. Now, most people have the opposite problem. Most managers don't get the input they should get, and that's a really big problem. So you've got to go to some happy medium there. So I would say, for example, when we had talks about strategy, about vision, and I will still get every single person on the team's input. But what used to happen is I used to get them involved in way too many sessions, rather than at some point you do just have to narrow down the team, take on board everyone's input and advice and ideas, but then you have to ultimately I'm the one making the decisions at the end. So that's from my personal journey. Being aware of when to involve people and when to make the final decisions, or other people make the final decisions, because that's also something we do very much, delegating decision-making power on a project basis, but basically making it clear who's doing that, and who's going to be involved at what stages. I think that would have saved a lot of time over the years. I'd like that, yeah.
It is really hard, isn't it? Because the whole one of the whole principles of self-management is that participation and co-creation of that environment, and the ways that you're working, so that we're getting rid of that sort of top-down way of working. And I see it a lot is we kind of finding your way between that consensus and consent is really hard. And I don't think there's like a black and white answer for that. I do feel that every business has to almost find their footing with it, and their teams have to find their footing with what that looks like.
Mm.
Because a lot of the time it is either we're going to do everything by consensus, which just takes forever, and like you say, takes so much time, or you then have the opposite end where you're just not involving them at all. So finding that middle ground, I think, is something that's so unique to every business or every organization.
Yeah, and every project within the business like will require different amounts of input by different team members. So yeah, it's honestly, I think these things are a case by case basis sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you've mentioned Semco Style, but is there anything else that has really inspired your journey, Holly, or anything that, you know, any books or anything that, you know, you continuously go to as a source of inspiration and guidance?
That's a really good question. I think my nursing background has really helped actually, in terms of perspective. Like it's very easy to get feeling overwhelmed and stressed about certain things, and I think that's where my nursing comes in, about remaining cool and calm during these situations, and show it. I mean, if you're with a patient that's deteriorating and you're showing that you're worried, that's absolutely not anyone wants to see. And because I'm a pediatric nurse, the patient would always have parents around, so there was always someone watching you. And I think that's important in leadership positions, actually, in because anyone can obviously be a leader in a team. So maybe if you're the project leader, being more specific, like just remaining cool, calm, and collected is I think really important. And I definitely go back to my nursing from that, and also just my work in the field, and just having that perspective of, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, it might be difficult to make this decision, or I might have to have a difficult conversation with someone today, but okay, it's totally fine. And who are the people we're helping, and the situation they're in is actually serious. This conversation I'm going to have this afternoon, that's not that's not life threatening or that difficult, really, in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I would say just my time in the field and my nursing experience, and then I like to read books like School of Life, and by Alain de Botton, and things like that, to just keep perspective. It really helps. Feeling insignificant is a great feeling for me. I know some people don't like that at all. I love it because it makes things feel inconsequential, and but that's just how I feel energized, actually.
Yeah, it keeps you humble, should we say, Holly? Yeah, I think I can really take a lot of wisdom from that, actually. I think I was rereading Liz Gilbert's Big Magic book the other day, and I think it's sometimes being able to sit in that paradox of like the work matters, but also the work doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, you know, care about the work that you're doing, but also realize that not everyone else cares about what you're doing. So don't put so much pressure on yourself.
Exactly. And I was speaking to a CEO of a charity last week, and she was saying that she used to work in a big corporate, you know, those 80-hour weeks and so on and so on. And then 3 times in her life, she got made redundant. So 3 times she was in a position where she thought, well, okay, hang on a minute, what have I been doing all these hours for if my role is actually now redundant and absorbed elsewhere or doesn't exist? So that really kind of shook her, and I think maybe that was a big decision, maybe, to go into charity work. But ultimately, it's really important to care about what you do. But again, it's good to realize on the grand scheme where how important your job is, and that's why it's good to work for an organization where self-management is in play, because that goes hand in hand. They care about your work-life balance. They care about that you might have a family and that's important to you, and you might have a hobby and a passion and that's important to you. And in self-management, you're trusted to make to balance that out. And if it's not going well, then you have an honest conversation about it. Because it's not to say people can just go off and do whatever they want, of course. You've still got to do your job, but in a way that works around your life. And I've got a child, and it's so wonderful that I don't sweat fear when the nursery calls and says he's got a temperature, I've got to collect him. I think, how am I going to tell my team? I imagine sometimes working for organisations where that causes great stress. It doesn't cause me stress because I just tell my team, they obviously are supportive, and I go and pick up my child, and my whole day and week is different because of that support. And that is so important that that's in place. Imagine the reduction of stress we would have if we supported each other in that way across the board.
Yeah, definitely. It's like self-management isn't just for businesses, it's just for society completely. If we just kind of adopted some of these principles more widely, we would have a much different world than we do right now.
I think so, definitely. It's the way forward.
We are incredibly biased on this podcast towards self-management, so it's fine. It's I think, like you said, Holly, I think when you've had those moments where you realize the impact that this is having, you're kind of like, why isn't everyone else doing this?
Yeah, it does baffle me. Like, I'm scratching my head all the time when my friends tell me the same issues. Their manager, and it's, you know, almost always the same story: blocking something, making something difficult, and direct conversations aren't happening because that's not the culture. And that just makes it very difficult, I think. And I can't wrap my head around it sometimes, how certain decisions are made, or why certain practices and certain culture is in place in the organization. It's definitely not the way of the future. And I feel like it's so nice to be in a position where I really believe that this is the way organizations are going. And you can see it, of course, slowly, but steadily changing, because it has to change, because this is the future, and people are realizing this and going off to organizations that offer better benefits. That ultimately, if you're doing, for example, a 4-day work week or flexible hours, this is all part of self-management. So
wrapping up, Holly, is there anything that you would love to leave our audience with? Is there anything that you feel called to share before we say our goodbyes?
Imparting wisdom. I would say, what I always think is, I don't know how related to self-management this is, maybe it is completely. I always have the perspective of, if something isn't going right at work with a team member or someone, or in life in general, that person didn't wake up wanting to make your life and day a misery. There's probably something going on, and having a kind conversation about it can resolve so much. And I would say, having the perspective that, I just often, when I can feel like, oh my gosh, why is that happening? I think, no, that person did not wake up wanting to be aggressive, or not communicate something really important with you, blah, 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 whatever the situation is. So address it and do it kindly. That's really important. And also, completely off topic, but supporting small charities. I think that's a really, also, lots of people think about supporting big charities, and obviously I'm completely biased because I'm working for a small charity, but keeping that in mind as well. And small organizations can do self-management, can be really efficient, and obviously, use funding very efficiently, and so on. So happy to, if anyone wants to reach out about advice about anything that I've spoken about, and the charity world, happy to speak about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Holly, and I'll make sure I leave your details in the show notes as well. So if anybody wants to reach out and pick your brains further, or get some wisdom around that, they can certainly reach out. But thank you so much for your time today, Holly.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Make It Thrive, the Company Culture Podcast.